Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on this fine winter's day. We are the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lower Bucks, and this is our Sunday service. My name is Gil, and I have the honor and the privilege of being your lay leader this morning. Hopefully, you were able to join us early enough to read all of our announcements, and there were quite a few of them because we have a lot of things going on that you can be involved in if you so desire. And lastly, I'd like to just remind you to put it into speaker view for your best visual viewing pleasure. So, welcome. Welcome to this congregation where for over half a century, we have been seeking to foster community, to grow our spirits, to serve others, and to work for justice. We're very glad that you have joined us this morning in our sacred cyberspace and hope that here you will experience love, acceptance, and inspiration. After our service, please feel welcome to stick around for fellowship and conversation. Our monthly touchstone themes strive to help us shape our days and guide our journey. Our February topic has been mercy. The prophet Micah counseled us to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. These qualities are universal and transformative. Justice and humility are important, but it is the love of mercy that is crucial. To love mercy is to understand how very important it is in human relations. Mercy is a grace because it is not deserved. It allows a person to return to life with dignity. Our sermon this morning will be from the Reverend Libby Smith. And Libby is delighted to come back here where she had the honor of serving as minister from 2007 to 2013. She was ordained in 1992 and served congregations in Rockport, Massachusetts, and Warrington, Pennsylvania, and spent 5 years as chaplain at the UU House Retirement Home in Philadelphia. Now retired from congregational service, she does occasional adjunct work for the Central East region of the UUA and enjoys the chance to do pulpit supply and rites of passage on request, such as the one that she did last Monday for Sonia's memorial service. And she did an amazing job. The title of her sermon today is Mercy Has a Human Heart. And these words from the poetry of William Blake remind us that our ability to be merciful is from our awareness of our shared humanity and our ability to feel compassion for others. We can nurture it by reflecting on the moments in our own lives when we have received that kind of mercy and compassion, and then recommit ourselves to passing it on. Now, let us enter into worship together. For our prelude this morning, our amazing musician, Avi Wisnia, has chosen a song with a very appropriate title, Mercy.
Don't give up, I know you can see all the world and the mess that we're making. Can't give up and hope God will intercede. So come on back, imagine that we could get it together. Stand up for what we need to be, 'cause crime won't save or feed a hungry child. Can't lay down and wait for a miracle to change things. comes. So lift up your eyes and lift up your heart, singing, mercy, will we overcome this? One by one, will we turn it around? If we carry on just a little bit longer, and I'll try to give you what you need. See, me and you and you and you, we just wanna be free, but you see, all the world is just as we've made it. Until we got a new world, I've got to say that love is not the whisper or the weakness. No, love is strong. We gotta get it together. Gotta get it till there's no reason to fight. Mercy, will we overcome this? Oh, one by one, will we turn it around? And if we carry on just a little bit longer, then I'll try to give you mercy. Will we overcome this? Oh, one by one, will we turn it around and maybe carry on and be a little bit stronger? And I'm gonna give you what you need. Sing, mercy, mercy, mercy.
Thank you, Avi. That's really a beautiful song. Please feel free to join me as I read the words for lighting our chalice. We light our flaming chalice to illuminate the world we seek. In the search for truth, may we be just. In the search for justice, may we be loving. And in loving, may we find peace. Our opening words this morning are from Gary Kowalski. We gather here to worship, to seek the truth, to grow in love, to join in service, to celebrate life's beauty and find healing for its pain, to honor our kinship with each other and with the earth, to create a more compassionate world, beginning with ourselves, to wonder at the mystery that gave us birth, to find courage for the journey's end, and to listen for the wisdom that guides us in the quietness of this moment. Our Director of Religious Exploration, Angela Connon, has a marvelous message for all ages for us.
Good morning, everybody. Today's service, Libby will be talking about compassion and mercy. And I found this lovely little story called The Visitor that I think is just right for today, and I hope you enjoy it. So here we go with The Visitor. Elise was scared of everything. She was scared of spiders, scared of people, and even scared of trees. She never went out, night or day. Elise liked her house to be neat and tidy, so she cleaned it every morning. Sometimes she opened a window to let in fresh air. Then one day, something unbelievable happened. A strange thing flew in through the window and landed at her feet. Elise looked at it. That'll have to go, she decided. She scooped it into the fire. But that night, She was too scared to sleep. The next morning, she heard knocking. No one ever knocked at her door. Why would they? She certainly wouldn't answer it, but the knocking didn't stop. In the end, she opened the door. She stared. "I'm here for my plane," said the boy. And can I use your bathroom? It's urgent," he added. "What shall I do?" wondered Elise. Then she heard herself say, "The bathroom is upstairs on the left." The boy climbed the stairs and disappeared. It seemed like forever. And then he came back. "Who's that?" he asked. Elise looked at the picture. He waited patiently. "It's me, when I was young," she said with a little smile. "I was invited to a dance, and I wore my prettiest dress." "Cool," said the boy, and he looked around some more. "Have you read them all?" he asked. "I have," said Elise, "every single one." "Will you read one to me?" It was a long time since Elise had read to anyone. The boy wanted to hear every story in the book. Then he wanted to play. When he got hungry, Elise buttered him a slice of bread. "I think you should probably go home now," she said. That sounded a bit sad. "What's your name?" asked the boy. "I'm Elise," said Elise. "And you?" "Emile," said the boy. "Bye, Elise. It's fun at your house." He waved goodbye. "Bye for now, Emile," she said. When it grew dark that night, Elise knew exactly what she needed to do. I love that story. I hope you liked it too, and enjoy the day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Angela. Isn't it amazing how when we go beyond our fears and reach out to somebody else, try to get to know them, it can be quite life-changing. For our interlude this morning, Avi has chosen a Randy Newman song.
Broken windows and empty hallways, a pale dead moon in the sky streaked with gray. Human kindness is overflowing, and I think it's going to rain today. Scarecrows dressed in the latest styles, with frozen smiles to chase love away. Human kindness is overflowing, and I think it's going to rain today. Right before me, a sign implores me to help the needy and show them the way. Human kindness is overflowing, and I think it's going to rain today. Human kindness is overflowing, and I think it's going to rain today.
I wonder if Avi checked the weather forecast before he picked that song for us. Thank you, Avi. For our reading this morning, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Reverend Libby Smith.
Thank you, Gil. It's great to be back with you all. And I just have to say that story, which was brand new to me when Angela suggested it, just went straight to my heart. And I'm going to be talking about that in the sermon. And I didn't know what the music was going to be, but that song that Avi just sang couldn't be more perfect. And I think of Randy Newman as such a sort of lighthearted, satiric kind of guy. And he did so many funny, biting songs. And that's so tender and so gentle, and it new to me and makes me want to go explore his music further. So I'm just grateful for both of those new discoveries this morning. Now, the reading for this morning is so short that my explanation of it is going to be much longer than the reading itself. I try to give correct attribution anytime I quote anybody, but sometimes it can be hard to pin down exactly who said something if it's out there on the internet attributed to various people. And the quotation that I'm about to share is most often attributed either to Plato or to Philo of Alexandria. But in fact, after doing a little research, I learned that it most likely came from a Scottish clergyman named John Watson, writing under the pen name of Ian Maclaren in the late 1800s. Although we can't be entirely sure, and it's possible that the quotation didn't take this exact form when it first appeared. So with all of those qualifying factors, I now give you our one sentence reading for this morning. Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. Here endeth the reading.
Thank you, Libby. That is profound, actually. Loving kindness. For our split plate offertory for the month of February, our awesome We Care Committee has designated that funds should go toward climate change efforts. It was determined the best place to send donations is to the Coalition for Rainforest Nations, an intergovernmental organization of over 50 rainforest nations around the world, from Ecuador to Bangladesh to Fiji. Their mission is simply to protect the rainforest. This coalition were participants in the formation of the Section on Forestry in the Paris Agreement. Every 12 cents donated will avert approximately 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide. It's money well spent, so please be generous. You can give by clicking the link provided in our amazing new website or the link in our e-newsletter, or you can go old school and mail a check to our office at UUFLB office. And if you do send a check, be sure to write split plate on the check memo line. We only have one planet, so please give with your heart. And now our sermon, Mercy Has a Human Heart. Libby?
Thanks, Gil. Mercy is a huge topic. And I sat with that and thought about that, and it could have taken me in a lot of different ways. And I decided, instead of wrestling with sort of the big cosmic implications of mercy and mercy versus justice and when is it appropriate to be merciful and when isn't it, I wanted to boil it down to the smallest, simplest, and most personal application of the concept of mercy that I could come up with. And in order to do that, I started thinking about times when I thought I had received mercy. And one in particular came to mind that I'd like to tell you about. And a few of you may have already heard this story, although probably not with quite so much detail. But it's been on my mind a lot as we approach the beginning of daylight savings time, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, and which is always a tense Sunday in spring for me, for reasons that will be clear soon. Because this is something that happened my first year of ministry when I was in Rockport, Massachusetts, doing a year of interim ministry. It was a part-time position, 1/3 time to be precise, and it didn't pay much. And I was fresh out of divinity school with student loans to pay, so I was also working as a nanny 2 days a week, which I found absolutely exhausting, much harder than ministry. And the church was also struggling financially. And at nearly every board meeting, the treasurer, who was a gruff and, to my mind, quite intimidating woman, would point out that the amount of the shortfall in the church's budget was exactly the amount that we were paying our part-time minister, and shouldn't we draw some conclusions from this fact? And as much as I resented her for implying that I was not worth the puny little salary they were paying me, part of me agreed with her. I presented a very upbeat front throughout the year, but inside I had a lot of anxiety and I struggled with depression because I was not at all sure I had the skills that they needed to move through the very complicated ministerial quagmire that they had been left in and the transitions they were trying to make. And I was not at all sure I could serve them well. So that's the background to let you know how I was feeling when, about 2/3 of the way through the year on Palm Sunday, I arrived at church on Sunday morning and found a knot of anxious board members clustered in the lobby. "You're late," they said. "No, I'm not late. I'm a half an hour early," I said. "No, you forgot to change your clock, Libby. You're a half an hour late." They weren't angry with me. They had assumed I had probably just forgotten, but they were a little worried that maybe I was on the side of the road somewhere after a terrible car wreck. So they were mostly just relieved that I was okay and I had arrived. They had everything completely under control. The worship committee had started the service. They had sung all 3 of the hymns already and taken the collection. They were hoping I would arrive in time to do the sermon, but if I didn't, they were prepared to invite people to spontaneously rise and give little testimonials about what the church meant to them and why it was important. So they were perfectly fine. I, on the other hand, was a wreck. I was absolutely mortified. How could I have been so stupid as to forget to change my clock and to be late to church? Not just any Sunday, but Palm Sunday, which in this little Universalist-based congregation actually still had some significance. And then, to make matters worse, instead of taking it in stride and responding in some calm and professional way, I looked at this group of kind, worried people and I burst into tears. They were a bit taken aback at first. And then it was my nemesis. It was the treasurer who begrudged every penny of my salary, who crossed the lobby and wrapped her arms around me and said kindly, "You mean we have a human being for a minister?" "Mercy has a human heart, pity a human face," wrote William Blake in his poem, The Divine Image. And he goes on to conclude, "Where mercy, love, and pity dwell, there God is dwelling too." Showing mercy is sometimes described as the closest that we human beings can get to being like God. And in that moment, in the embrace of that gruff treasurer, I felt the embrace of the divine. Now, I realize many of us don't think in quite those terms. Don't think of acts of goodness and mercy as actual manifestations of divine presence. Actually, I'm not sure I do either, although I do occasionally feel like I experience them that way. But we do know at a very deep level how powerful those moments of mercy and goodness are when we experience them. And William Blake was right, they do have a human face. It's through our interactions with other people that we're able to experience compassion and forgiveness and mercy. And sometimes we find those things where we least expect them. Now, in forgetting to set my clock ahead, I did not commit some mortal sin. It wasn't the kind of transgression for which one might expect to have to beg for mercy. No one had been hurt. No one had really even been seriously inconvenienced. In fact, they got a big kick out of it, and the whole thing turned into a lighthearted joke as the board members flung open the doors to the sanctuary and shoved me in, to my great embarrassment, where the congregation rose and gave me a standing ovation just for showing up. Another act of mercy. I have certainly made much more serious mistakes in my life with much more serious repercussions. And sometimes I have been lucky enough to be forgiven for those too. But I chose a minor sin as my illustration for two reasons. One is that the big stuff is far too embarrassing to share in a sermon, and you really don't need to know about it. But the other is that we live so much of our lives in need of the mercy of others, not for the big things, but for the small ones, the everyday failings, the stupid mistakes that we make just because we're human. I needed mercy that morning in Rockport, not because I had done some terrible thing. I needed mercy for the way I was beating myself up over having done it. It may have been a very forgivable mistake, but in that moment, I didn't feel forgivable. Because I had this whole backstory of insecurity and self-doubt and fatigue. I needed kindness because I was fighting a hard battle, even if it didn't show on the outside. And the most unlikely person in the room was the one who got it. She was kind. She probably thought I was overreacting, but she chose to offer words of comfort and acceptance instead of judgment or ridicule or even lighthearted teasing. It was a moment of mercy that even now, almost 30 years later, feeds my soul. She gave me a gift of humor and warmth and kindness in the face of my silly mistake. And because of that, I could come to see it as just a silly mistake. The whole incident took on its proper proportions and became something I could laugh at and learn from and remember with a chuckle instead of a flush of shame. And it's a good thing because it kept coming back to haunt me. The next morning, in fact, Monday morning, I walked into the post office. This is the beauty of living in a very small town. Walked into the post office and the woman behind the counter, who I did not even know, looked at me and said, "Oh, I hear you were late to church yesterday." I went out for coffee later that morning and my waitress said, "Hear you were late for church yesterday." News travels fast in Rockport, Massachusetts in the off season. Now, in most contexts, when we talk about mercy, the act of granting mercy implies that you have power and authority over someone, that you could choose to mete out some well-deserved punishment. So to have mercy is then to choose not to punish, but to forgive, to grant pardon. So we usually hear the word in the context of the forgiveness of sins or of crimes. But the kind of mercy I'm talking about this morning is so much smaller than that. I don't think it's any less important, but it's much smaller. It's still a granting of forgiveness in a way, forgiveness for the simple reality of being human and making mistakes. Most of the time, I think the mercy we need takes the form of simple kindness. Because we don't only need mercy when we've done terrible things. We need mercy when we feel like terrible people, whether we've done anything wrong or not. We need mercy when the hard battle that we're fighting the one that may not show on the surface, leaves us feeling fragile and vulnerable. We need the mercy of acceptance when we feel unacceptable, of love when we feel unlovable, of respect when we feel unworthy of it. And with that in mind, I invite you to think back with me about our story this morning. Here we have Elise, living alone, afraid of everything. She's afraid of people. She's afraid of spiders. She's afraid of trees. We don't know why she's afraid of everything. Clearly, there's a history. She's got a backstory, but we don't know what it is. And isn't that just like life? Everybody's got a backstory. Everybody we meet has a history of things that weigh on them, that make their life harder. And often we know nothing about what those things are. Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. Elise is fighting a hard battle against her fear, and I would guess against her loneliness. And when Emil comes into her life, he doesn't know any of that. He's not there to do a good deed, to reach out to a lonely neighbor and cheer her up. He's not trying to transform her life. He just wants his paper airplane back, and he needs to go to the bathroom. But then he gets curious about her. He gets curious about her pictures, about her books, about her. He doesn't know that she's afraid of everything. He doesn't know that she has walled herself off from the world. And so he just walks right into her world. And his simple interest in her and her life becomes an act of mercy. And I love the way the illustrations in this story mirror what's happening in Elise's life. At the beginning, everything in the book, I don't know how much of this you were able to catch the first time through. I didn't really notice it till I looked at it several times. But at the beginning, everything in the book is in black and white. The only color is the sunshine you can see outside the window. And then the paper airplane flies through the window, and it brings a little bit of color with it. And then Emil arrives, and he walks in, and he's in full color, and he's trailing color behind him. And everywhere he goes in the house, the color begins to wash over the things that he looks at or touches. First, you see it carpeting the stairs behind him as he's walking up. And then when he looks at the picture of her on the wall, there's color in the picture. And then when he looks at the books, they all suddenly are all bright colors. By the end, Elise's whole house appears in full color. The very last thing to take on color is Elise herself. But by the end, her cheeks are pink and her dress is beginning to be pink also. She's coming to life. Her whole life has changed. And all because she opened the door and let somebody in. And that's the thing about mercy. And remember that the Hebrew word that gets translated mercy can also mean compassion or loving kindness. It doesn't take much. Even very small experiences of mercy can have a very big impact. If you've been on the receiving end of that kind of acceptance and kindness, then you know what I'm talking about. It doesn't take much to turn a situation around. And the reverse is also true. It doesn't take much judgment or harshness to turn a situation around either. I said that we usually think of mercy as something that is granted by someone who has the power to punish or not, to grant mercy or not. I know what you've done, and I could choose to punish you, but instead I choose to be merciful. But I think a lot of the time it's a lot more subtle than that. Simple acts of kindness are acts of mercy. Because we could always, in any situation, choose not to be kind. We always have a certain amount of power over the people we encounter, just by virtue of the way we choose to treat them. And we make choices every moment of every day about how we treat other people. That church treasurer that day in the foyer could have said, "Oh, grow up, it's not such a big deal." And my memories of that day would be completely different. But instead, she affirmed my humanness. And she probably didn't even realize that she had transformed that experience for me. We never talked about it. I doubt she remembers the incident at all, except maybe to think about that minister. Now, what was her name? That one who was late to church once. Wasn't that funny? That's probably as much as she has retained. But every moment of it is etched on my heart. And I sometimes wonder, if I had kept on my professional mask, the one I'm so good at, if I had acted as if everything was just fine, would I still be carrying a memory of the internal embarrassment and shame of that day? If I'd kept my armor up, no one would have known that I needed mercy, and so they might not have offered it. Like Elise, I opened my door, and kindness walked in and changed everything. During this pandemic, many of us are living in much more restricted circumstances than we were accustomed to before. Many of us are encountering far fewer people. We're having a lot fewer interactions, and the ones that we are having are somewhat shrouded by the presence of a mask that covers half of our face and blocks our expression. And sometimes that makes it feel as though our behavior doesn't really matter as much. Because who can tell if I'm smiling or frowning, for example? But whether it's the clerk at the grocery store or the agent on a telephone customer service line with whom I'm interacting, or my husband down in the family room, or the neighbor I pass on the street, everyone I meet is fighting a hard battle, probably harder now than it was a year ago. And so how I choose to interact with them, even on the most limited of scales, matters more than I might think about moment to moment and day to day. So now more than ever, just very simply, I suggest that we learn to practice random acts of mercy, that we forgive each other constantly for being human, for making mistakes, that we remember that everyone we meet is fighting a hard battle, that we remember the times when we have received blessing, when we expected judgment, and find ways to pass it on. Mercy has a human heart, so let's make it our own. Thank you.
Thank you, Libby. That was really a beautiful, beautiful sermon. I got to say, you knocked it right out of the park on that one. It's true. We really have no idea what this small, little, loving act of kindness, how it's going to affect somebody. So we should do it as often as possible. Now is the time in our service when we recognize and lift up one another in love. Let us be fully present and listen with open hearts. If you'd like to share a joy or a sorrow, click on participants and then click raise hand, and we will help you to unmute. And for everyone's benefit, please be brief. Not all at once, please. Well, if no one else has a joy, I certainly have a joy, and that is there's a man in our congregation who has been like a father to me and a mentor, someone I love immensely. And today is Bill Stroop's birthday. So happy birthday, Bill. I hope I embarrassed you.
He can unmute now.
Well, Gil, I can't raise my hand because I think you've made me a co-host, so I don't have that option. So I'm just going to jump right in, because while you're giving shout outs, I need to give a little shout out to Gil, because the work that he did on Sonia's memorial service and the photo montages that he put together to show us her life and her images and her art and the technical support that he gave to weaving together the spoken word and the images and the recorded music was just incomparable. And I was enormously grateful. So thank you.
Bill is unmuted.
You're unmuted, Bill.
No, I just wanted to say, I never consider myself your mentor, but that is amazing. That's a very tender and merciful thing you just did. So,
Well, it's from the heart, believe me.
Our daughter Debbie was on Sonia's memorial service, and she called me the next day to tell me how well it was put together and what a good job you did with everything, Gil. So thank you from her also.
Well, I had a lot of help.
Anyone else?
All right, well, I guess that's it. Whether or not you shared today, for your joys, we in this community join you in celebration. For any sorrows or concerns, may you feel our sympathy and our compassion. Let's pause for just a moment of silent meditation and gratitude and prayer. For our closing song, Avi has a rousing rendition of Love Will Guide Us.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way. On the road from greed to giving, love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way. On the road from greed to giving, love will guide us through the hard night.
Thank you, Avi. Please feel free to join me as I read our closing words and our chalice is extinguished. May our faith sustain us, our hope inspire us, and our love surround us as we go our separate ways, knowing that we will gather again in this beloved community. Our service is concluded. Please feel welcome to stay for our very